The circulatory system, or cardiovascular system, is composed of the heart and the blood vasculature, the arteries and the veins. The heart and vasculature work together in a closed-loop system to distribute blood throughout the body. Arteries carry blood away from the heart, and veins carry blood to the heart. This circulation of blood supplies cells with oxygen and nutrients and removes carbon dioxide and metabolic waste. The materials conveyed by the blood keep cells healthy and active, fight disease, and prevent unnecessary blood loss. The heart is the major component of the cardiovascular system. Located in the chest cavity, it is squeezed between the lungs and protected by the rib cage. The heart functions as a double pump. Its right and left sides work in coordination to pump oxygenated blood throughout the body and deoxygenated blood to the lungs. Key concepts in this section. The heart provides the force that constantly pumps blood through the vasculature of the cardiovascular system and through the lungs of the respiratory system. Arteries carry blood away from the heart, and veins carry blood to the heart. Blood circulates through the body in two loops. In the systemic circulation loop, oxygenated blood travels from the heart to the rest of the body. The heart's left side pushes blood into the aorta. This great vessel branches to the arterial tree, which carries the oxygen-rich blood to tissues throughout the body. At the end of the systemic circuit, deoxygenated blood returns to the heart, pouring into the right side through two great vessels, the superior vena cava and the inferior vena cava. In the pulmonary circulation loop, the cardiovascular system works in conjunction with the respiratory system to exchange carbon dioxide for oxygen. Deoxygenated blood travels from the right side of the heart to the lungs. There, blood cells release carbon dioxide and absorb oxygen. This gas exchange occurs in millions of air sacs called alveoli, which are distributed throughout each lung. Oxygenated blood returns from the lungs to the left side of the heart, and another loop of systemic circulation begins. Key concepts in this section. Systemic circulation describes how oxygenated and deoxygenated blood travel from the heart throughout the body. Pulmonary circulation describes how oxygenated and deoxygenated blood travels between the heart and lungs. The heart is a muscular organ that functions as a double pump to control blood flow. The heart of an adult male is slightly larger than that of an adult female. On average, a normal adult heart is about the size of a fist and weighs approximately 300 grams, less than 1 pound. The exterior of the heart has a conical shape. The interior of the heart is divided into 4 hollow chambers, enclosed by a layered wall. The heart has a right and a left side, each side with 2 chambers, an atrium and a ventricle. The right and left sides of the heart work in coordination to pump oxygenated blood throughout the body and deoxygenated blood to the lungs. The heart of a healthy adult beats about 60 to 70 times a minute to keep blood constantly moving. The heart is located in the center of the thoracic cavity, between the right lung and the left lung, and between the second and fifth ribs. The thoracic cavity's skeletal structure includes the ribs, the spinal column, and the sternum. Together, the sternum and the ribs form the anterior, or front, of the thoracic cavity. The spinal column and the back of the rib cage form the posterior, or the back, of the thoracic cavity. These structures of the thoracic cavity form a protective cage known as the thoracic cage that encloses the heart and lungs. A variety of structures within or immediately surrounding the thoracic cage play a key role in oxygenating and distributing blood throughout the body. These structures include the lungs, major arteries, and veins that connect the heart to systemic and pulmonary circulation, and the diaphragm that facilitates inspiration, or intake of air, into the lungs. Within the thoracic cavity, there is a thin sac, known as the pericardium, that encloses and protects the heart. The pericardium has a number of important functions. It acts as a shield against trauma and infection. It defends the heart against friction as it beats in the chest. It anchors the heart and keeps it contained within the thoracic cavity. It protects the heart from overfilling when blood volume increases, and it contributes to the pumping action of the heart. The next section covers specific details about the heart wall and the chambers that form the inside of the heart. Key concepts in this section. The heart is located in the thoracic cavity between the lungs. The heart weighs less than a pound and is about the size of a fist. Its exterior appears conical. Its interior contains 4 hollow chambers. The heart is surrounded by a number of structures that contribute to its role in blood circulation and is protected by the pericardium. The heart wall is composed of several layers. The 3 layers of the heart wall are the epicardium, the myocardium, and the endocardium. The outermost layer, or the epicardium, is also known as the visceral pericardium, or the innermost layer of the pericardium. It covers the heart, wraps around the roots of the great blood vessels, and adheres the heart wall to its protective sac. The middle layer is called the myocardium. The myocardium is responsible for the heart's pumping action. Its strong muscle tissue makes powerful, continuous contractions possible. This thick layer performs the bulk of the heart's work. The endocardium is the inner layer of the heart wall, lining the heart's interior structures, the chambers, valves, and papillary muscles. The endocardium is continuous with the lining of the blood vessels that attach to the heart. Together, these 3 layers of the heart wall aid contraction and relaxation as the heart pumps. Key concepts in this section. The heart wall's 3 layers are the epicardium, the endocardium, and the myocardium. The myocardium provides most of the heart's pumping force. The heart works like a double pump, with right and left sides that work in coordination to pump oxygenated blood throughout the body and deoxygenated blood to the lungs. Here, you can see the right and left sides of the heart's interior. A partition, known as the septum, splits the heart and separates the right and left chambers. The 4 hollow chambers inside the heart momentarily fill, then empty, as blood pumps in and out of the heart. There are 2 types of chambers on the right and left sides. They are known as the right atrium and left atrium, and the right ventricle and left ventricle. Key concepts in this section. The heart has 4 internal chambers, 2 atria, and 2 ventricles. Each of the 4 heart chambers has a different purpose. The atria receive blood into the heart, and the ventricles push blood out of the heart. The right atrium receives oxygen-depleted blood as it returns to the heart. It empties the deoxygenated blood into the right ventricle. From there, the blood rushes out to the lungs for gas exchange. Oxygenated blood flowing from the lungs enters the left atrium. The blood empties from this chamber into the left ventricle. From there, it flows out of the heart to distribute oxygen throughout the body. Blood flow through the heart chambers and out of the heart is controlled by valves. The 4 valves are introduced in the next section. Key concepts in this section. The right side of the heart returns deoxygenated blood to the lungs. The left side of the heart delivers oxygenated blood throughout the body. 4 valves in the heart ensure that blood flows along the proper path, from the atria into the ventricles and out of the ventricles through the vessels of systemic or pulmonary circulation. The valves maintain proper blood flow by opening and closing the 4 chambers. Heart valves consist of flaps that cause blood to course in one direction only, preventing backflow. The unidirectional flaps that make up each valve are also referred to as cusps or leaflets. Each of the 4 heart valves differs in structure and function. The 2 valves located between the left and right atria and the left and right ventricles are called the atrioventricular valves. They are often referred to by their abbreviation, the AV valves. The AV valves facilitate the flow of blood as it moves into the ventricles from the atria. Fibrous cords, called the chordae tendineae, secure the AV valves to the papillary muscles on the walls of the right and left ventricles. The cords help ensure that the valves always open downward and cannot invert. The tricuspid valve is an AV valve located on the heart's right side. It is so named because it is composed of 3 cusps: the anterior leaflet, the posterior leaflet, and the septal leaflet. When the tricuspid valve opens, blood empties from the right atrium into the right ventricle. The heart's left side contains another AV valve known as the mitral valve. It has 2 cusps: the anterior and posterior, or septal and mural leaflets. When the mitral valve opens, blood empties from the left atrium into the left ventricle. The AV valves maintain proper blood flow within the heart. The heart's other 2 valves, the pulmonary valve and the aortic valve, control the proper flow of blood exiting the heart. These valves provide an exit from the heart into the major arteries. Blood flows through them out to the lungs or to other parts of the body. The pulmonary valve and the aortic valve are often referred to jointly as the semilunar valves because each cusp of these valves resembles a half moon in shape. The pulmonary valve is on the right side of the heart. When it opens, blood empties out of the right ventricle and flows in the pulmonary trunk toward the lungs. The 3 flaps of the pulmonary valve are called the right cusp, left cusp, and anterior cusp. The other semilunar valve, known as the aortic valve, is on the left side of the heart. When it opens, blood empties out of the left ventricle into the aorta and flows from the heart to the rest of the body. The 3 flaps of the aortic valve are the left coronary cusp, the right coronary cusp, and the non-coronary cusp. Key concepts in this section. Heart valves maintain proper flow and prevent backflow as blood moves through the heart and exits the heart. AV valves are located between the atria and ventricles. The pulmonary valve is located between the right ventricle and the pulmonary artery that brings blood to the lungs. The aortic valve is located between the left ventricle and the aorta. The cardiac cycle regulates both electrical and mechanical activities of the heart. An electrical impulse is sent, which results in a mechanical action. This cycle repeats again and again, increasing during exertion and decreasing while the body is at rest. Blood flows through the heart in the following sequence. An electrical impulse stimulates contraction of the atria, which results in the opening of the atrioventricular valves. Key concepts in this section. The cardiac cycle regulates both electrical and mechanical activities that create impulses and contractions. The cardiac cycle splits into 2 phases, systole and diastole. During systole, the ventricles pump blood into the vasculature. During diastole, the ventricles fill with blood from the atria. At rest, the cardiac cycle triggers contractions approximately 60 to 70 times a minute. The heart's conduction system is responsible for regulating the electrical impulses that make the heart beat. Cardiac muscle contractions are involuntary movements controlled by these impulses. The heart's conduction system is a series of linked regions throughout the heart tissue. These linked regions create pathways for the electrical impulses that trigger contractions of the heart muscle. The electrical impulses are generated by bundles of specialized nerve tissue, known as nodes. These impulses begin in the sinoatrial node, commonly referred to as the SA node or the sinus node. The sinoatrial node can be found near the top of the right atrium. The SA node is a natural pacemaker, and it sets the rhythm for the entire heart. It fires off an impulse that travels through the atria and stimulates the contraction that leads blood to empty from the atria into the ventricles. The impulse also reaches a second bundle, known as the atrioventricular node, or the AV node. The AV node is found in the lower part of the right atrium, close to the interventricular septum. It acts as a relay station that allows the atria to empty before releasing the electrical impulse to the next bundle. The SA node fires faster than the AV node. The AV node functions at a slower rate to allow time for the atria to fully contract before sending the impulse along. The impulse travels from the AV node to the bundle of His. From there, it transverses along the right and left bundle branches. Finally, the impulse travels through the Purkinje fibers, which have a frequency of 20 to 40 beats per minute. Reaching the ventricles, it stimulates contraction, and the heart ejects blood. Key concepts in this section. Contractions of the cardiac muscle are controlled by the heart's electrical conduction system. Electrical impulses in the heart begin in the sinoatrial, or SA node, and pass to the atrioventricular, or AV node. Impulses travel from the AV node to the bundle of His, then to the right and left bundle branches, and finally through the Purkinje fibers. When the impulse reaches the ventricles, the heart contracts and ejects blood. The cardiovascular system circulates blood throughout the body in a network of vessels that delivers oxygen, nutrients, and other substances to body tissues. Known as the vasculature, this network includes the great vessels that connect to the heart, as well as the arteries and veins that branch out from the great vessels to the rest of the body. 5 different types of blood vessels exist: arteries, arterioles, capillaries, venules, and veins. Arteries are the large vessels that carry oxygenated blood away from the heart. They branch into smaller arterioles, which in turn branch into microscopic vessels called capillaries. Capillaries are organized in networks called capillary beds and interconnect among individual cells and close the loop between arteries and veins. As capillaries bring oxygenated blood and nutrients to cells, they remove waste products, such as carbon dioxide. These vessels are sometimes referred to as exchange vessels due to their vital role in exchanging materials between interstitial fluid and blood. Small vessels, called venules, transport deoxygenated blood from capillary beds. Venules lead to the larger veins, which bring the blood back to the heart. Each blood vessel has a hollow channel called a lumen through which blood flows. However, arteries and veins have slightly different structures. Arteries can change in diameter to withstand higher pressure. They are thick and muscular, with layers of smooth muscle and elastic tissue that allow them to expand to accommodate blood pumping from the heart. Veins, on the other hand, undergo lower pressure and have thinner walls that do not adjust in diameter. Pressure gradients within veins keep blood moving. In addition, veins have valves to prevent the backflow of blood. The valves within veins function in a way that is similar to the valves of the heart. Key concepts in this section. The vasculature is the network of blood vessels that delivers nutrients and removes waste from body tissues. The 5 types of blood vessels are arteries, arterioles, capillaries, venules, and veins. Capillary beds are networks of capillaries where nutrients and wastes, such as oxygen and carbon dioxide, are exchanged between interstitial fluid and blood. In pulmonary circulation, oxygen-depleted blood returns to the heart through the superior and inferior venae cavae and enters the right atrium. The right atrium empties the deoxygenated blood into the right ventricle. From there, the blood leaves the heart and enters the pulmonary trunk and the pulmonary arteries that transport the blood into the right and left lungs, where red blood cells exchange carbon dioxide for oxygen. The now oxygen-rich blood travels from the lungs into the pulmonary veins, which transport it to the left atrium of the heart, completing the pulmonary circuit. As pulmonary circulation ends, systemic circulation begins. The left atrium receives oxygenated blood from the lungs. The blood empties from this chamber into the left ventricle. From there, it pumps out of the heart through the aorta, the largest artery in the body. This large vessel has several segments, including the ascending aorta, the aortic arch, the descending thoracic aorta, and the descending abdominal aorta. Each of these segments has branches that reach into different body regions. The carotid arteries transport oxygenated blood to the brain, the brachial arteries to the arms, and the renal arteries into the kidneys. Nearing the base of the spine, the descending aorta splits into two branches, known as the iliac arteries, which supply the pelvic region. Branches of the common iliac arteries, the internal and external iliac arteries, supply blood to the lower extremities. In the thighs, the femoral arteries course downward from the external iliac arteries and continue into the popliteal arteries near the knee, which branch to supply the feet. The blood is pushed from larger arteries into arterioles and further into microscopic capillaries that disperse oxygen and nutrients into cells and collect carbon dioxide and other waste. It then travels through venules into veins. Deoxygenated blood returns to the heart through these veins. Major veins include the jugular veins from the brain, the azygous vein from the thoracic cavity, the brachial and cephalic veins from the arms, the renal veins from the kidneys, the iliac veins from the pelvis, the posterior tibial veins from the feet, the popliteal veins from the calves into the knees, and the femoral veins from the thighs. Blood pours from these different veins into the superior or inferior vena cava, then into the right atrium, beginning the process of pulmonary circulation. Circulation to the structures of the heart follows a loop called coronary circulation, a circuit with a dedicated network of vessels that supply the cardiac muscle with oxygen and nutrients and drain waste products. Coronary circulation begins when oxygen-rich blood empties from the aorta into the right and left coronary arteries. Stretching over the surface of the heart, these arteries extend into smaller blood vessels that supply the heart. Blood suffused with carbon dioxide drains from the heart into the cardiac veins. They converge at the coronary sinus, which returns the oxygen-depleted blood into the right atrium. Blood constantly moves through all three circuits, from the heart to the lungs and back, from the heart to the body and back, and from the heart chambers to the cardiac muscle and back. Key concepts in this section. Pulmonary circulation is the path blood follows from the heart to the lungs and back to complete gas exchange. Systemic circulation is the path blood follows from the heart throughout tissues of the body and back to distribute nutrients and return waste. Coronary circulation is the path blood follows between the heart chambers and heart tissue to distribute nutrients and return waste. The aorta is the largest artery in the body, supplying other arteries with oxygenated blood from the heart's left ventricle. Other key arteries include carotid arteries, brachial arteries, renal arteries, iliac arteries, femoral arteries, and popliteal arteries. The superior and inferior vena cava receive deoxygenated blood from the body's veins, emptying it into the heart's right atrium. Other key veins include jugular veins, azygous vein, brachial veins, cephalic veins, renal veins, iliac veins, posterior tibial veins, femoral veins, and popliteal veins.